Afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan from RCB Radio Sport, live at 92.5 and 94.8 FM and online at www.rcb.ie. As we look ahead now, as we continue our build up to the Senior Championship and Intermediate Championship, we look at we go now to Intermediate Football Championship, and we look at the tie between O'Currys and Coolmeen. We're delighted to be joined by a member of the Coolmeen management team, one of the backroom staff, Sean McMahon. And I suppose, Sean, if I can just start back in relation to 2019, in relation to the championship for Coolmeen. I was there, I saw one or two of your rounds, and I suppose it was a championship that probably it was slow enough to start, but it sort of got momentum after you got that hard-fought win over Aerogues' second side. And let us be known, this was before Aerogues' first team played, so an awful lot of the lads that feature for Aerogues' first team played against just the day beforehand or the week beforehand. So that was a real bruising encounter, and then obviously you had to play Brickens, who went on to win the championship. But I saw your game specifically. I saw your game against Aerogues, and I specifically saw your game against Shannon Gales. And it's fair to say you had the opportunities that day against Shannon Gales in the second round. So obviously in the second half, you had lots of opportunities to put the Gales to start. And in fact, probably you could have easily won that game if you'd taken all your opportunities. So if you look back in 2019, I suppose first of all, you probably goal one, you got out of your group, but apart from that, you'd probably be a bit disappointed that you probably didn't take down the Gales in that round.
Yeah, I suppose in regards to the Gales, it was a very hard fought game, but we kind of ruled our too many missed opportunities, and I suppose we leaked a fairly soft goal that gave them the momentum, but we could never get back. We couldn't take our scoring chances, and we could never really get back into it after that goal. So I suppose that was really it. Like if we had maybe taken a few more opportunities, picked off a few more scores, we might have got it, but we just couldn't really get into it after that goal, say. But no, against Aerogues, we got a great result the first day out, and it's great to get a win the first day. And I suppose against Brickens, now we came up with a far superior side. And above Milltown that day, now they really took control from where to go, really. So nice or easy knowing they went on, and they had a great championship after that. But no, looking forward now to 2020. I suppose it's a different management this year. Now there's four new guys in. Myself, Noah Meany, Francis Kindy, and we have Michael Harris back from Clonagad. So it's our first year together now, and I suppose I wouldn't have much managerial experience myself, or even being as a selector, but so far I suppose it's kind of been interrupted with the COVID-19, but we're getting back on track now. Like every other club, we have the same time to get back and get ready for championship.
I suppose, Sean, you were probably one of the lucky ones that got to play a game at the early on in the round of the league. You got to play Cracklow. I was actually behind in that game. I went back to see that, and you got off to a real good, positive start. I know many people were wondering the score coming down the stretch. It was so close, but you earned a 1-point victory over Cracklow. And I suppose that really set you up nicely in terms of trying to get promotion back to the Gary Cup. So it's probably a bit disappointing for new management, players trying, probably Mikey, an outsider, trying to learn about the players after getting that result. Obviously what happened, and I suppose, but encouraging signs nonetheless. I suppose Lee Markham and a few other prominent players that will feature for Cracklow in the Senior Championship were playing on that day.
Yeah, they were on that day. In fairness, now they had a good strength team out against us, and it was a very good game. Now a very good, entertaining game, and we were lucky enough to come out with, as I say, a 1-point win. Like the spirits were up after that game. We were really looking forward to playing Kilkee the following weekend, but unfortunately things had to be called to a halt because of the COVID. But yeah, things were going well. We had a few solid weeks training done, and we're really looking forward to the next game. But as I say, that didn't go ahead.
Yeah, I suppose, Sean, in terms of you're back probably 3 weeks now in terms of preparation. I spoke to a few teams now and intermediate teams, and they've been talking about the difficulties in relation to get challenge games. Some of the senior teams obviously have gone outside the county, and in terms of trying to get a game against a senior outfit, I suppose it's very hard in relation to the 3 week time span. Most of the senior teams want to play either other teams from outside the county. How have you fared? You don't have to tell me who you played, but have you been successful in getting one or two meaningful challenge matches?
Yeah, we were able to get one challenge game actually against a senior club there 2 weekends ago, and we actually had it was a very very competitive game now in the first half. Say second half, then we kind of introduced both sides introduced their kind of extended panel, like say we just subs rolling on and off as the first and second half went. But no, it was it was our first game back really, like we'd only 2 weeks training them, but it was a good game, good workout for the lads. But we've been trying to look for challenge games since, I suppose, and we're hopefully to get one maybe later on this week. But as you say, it's time is against you really for challenge games and stuff like that when you have teams probably going outside the county maybe even to get challenge games at this stage.
Yeah, I suppose, Sean, in terms of your player pool, in terms of players from last year, in terms of 2019, I suppose Coolmeen have a base of players that an awful lot of them are probably not commuting, maybe in college in different counties, probably working. I know a few of them are working in Dublin and Cork and making the commute back to Coolmeen. Obviously, with COVID-19 restrictions, have you lost any players from last year's squad? Or likewise, because of the restrictions, have you gained anyone or someone that's come back into the fold, or any sort of long-term injuries that have healed up and are available for you this year?
We're kind of lucky enough. A lot of our players are actually based at home. As you said, there's one or two, one in Dublin, one in Cork, but majority of them are at home. So we're lucky that way. Now we can get solid enough numbers for training midweek. With regards to losing anyone, we didn't really lose anyone. One or two players and gained one or two young lads. So we kind of have kept the same kind of numbers. But no, we're kind of lucky enough now that a lot of players work locally or are living around the same area, like. So, well, a good few live in the town, like, but it's a short journey out for training.
I suppose that in terms of your opponents now, O'Currys, many people look at this tie, and it's probably like the two favourites people in most people's eyes, in probably aside from Dora Fairfield, Kildice and Corfin are meeting the opening round. But obviously, people, if you look at all the other ties, this one is a really hard one to call on paper. Coolmeen versus O'Currys, I suppose, for sort of ding-dong battles down through the years, and O'Currys are trying to really find themselves after dropping down from the senior ranks. They'll probably be disappointed with their intermediate championship last year and never really got going from maybe that amalgamation with Navone as playing in the senior ranks affected them a bit, one could say. But O'Currys probably backbone by a good lot of senior players who would have played in the past, the likes of Sean Hawke, the likes of Michael O'Shea, that would have played for Clare in the past, and a few of their youngsters now would have been probably in that are in 23 or 24, Cahill Downs and those guys that when they were minors would have played for Clare as well. So O'Currys always, if they get their best 15 on the pitch, they're a physical, tough and a bruising encounter for anyone.
Oh, they are definitely. Now we haven't played them now in championship in just a long time, a good few years now. They were always a couple of divisions above us. They've had a lot of years in senior, whereas we were down in the junior ranks. But this is our first time meeting them, say, in championship. But we have played over the years in the league or even challenge games, and they're very tough encounters now. Like, they're a very hard physical team, as you say, so there's going to be nothing easy got there anyway. But I suppose at the end of the day, it's whoever wants it more turns up for it, because they're going to want it as just as much as we do, like, so.
I suppose, Sean, the format this year is quite straightforward in many regards. everyone's treating this opening round game as a do or die sort of battle. They're not seeing any sort of no back door, obviously, because obviously the scenario is if you go in the back door, you're going to be meeting either Kildysart or Corofin, and in a three-way sort of playoff, and then you might have to play 2 games over the space of 24 hours of a Friday or Monday to reach that 4th semi-final spot. So obviously this route one is the best way to go in this sort of championship. Win your first game, and if you get a favourable tie in the winners round, maybe team that you would feature on your same calibre, likes of Wolf Tones, or winners of Wolf Tones, Michael Cusicks, winners of Shannon Gales and the Scanner, maybe the winners of Kilfenora and Kilfenora in Rogue B. There's a real possible outcome scenario that you could be one of those three teams that wind up in a county semi-final, and anything's possible after that. But lose the first game, you definitely have to beat either the losers of Corofin or Kildysart to get to a county semi-final.
Yeah, exactly. Well, every team is going to be out for the same thing, is to get over the line on the first game. Like, so you're going to treat it as a quarter-final or whatever. You have to, like, you just have to get over there, and if it doesn't go your way, you have the second chance. But as you say, it's going to be a tough outcome playing the losers of Kildysart or Corofin or whoever, which one is going to be like. But I suppose it's just try and get over the first game, really, isn't it? Everyone's going to be out in with the same attitude. Win your first game and move on from there, really.
Yeah, and I suppose, Sean, in terms of the 3 teams that do make the semi-final, in terms of training, you have that bit of extra break, you have that bit of leeway into it. Plus, you also get to go and watch that 3-way playoff, and you get to size up that 4 team that does make the semi-final. So there's awful advantages there that you learn an awful lot. But on the flip side, the 4 team that does come through to that semi-final, they'll be carrying savage momentum. They'll probably have won 3 games on the trot to get to county semi-finals. So they'll be very much the form team. So whoever does come through that loser section, obviously we'll be carrying all the form and momentum into a county semi-final. So there's a real advantages for that team that does make it, but also there's an awful lot of advantages as well going through the straight door as well. I mean, less games, and plus obviously it gives more time to prepare.
Exactly. I suppose it depends which way you look from it. Like, if you get through the back door and you make the semi-final, you're going to be delighted anyway. And as you say, you'll have a lot of competitive games in the run-up to it. Whereas if you win the first day, you're through, like, it's taking an awful lot of pressure off you trying to go in the back door stage. But I think everybody will be trying to win your game the first day and rule out the back door scenario.
And I suppose, Sean, in terms of your panel, in terms of leadership, and I suppose having Cahill still involved in the county team, Cahill would have played an awful lot, obviously down through the years with Clare, obviously we know that, but he obviously been part of Colm Collins' panel there at the start of the year. So he would still have that training schedule, straight training regime. So he would have an awful lot. His fitness levels would be still very high, and he'd be in peak condition. And I know Mikey is very, very renowned in terms of his fitness training as well. So in terms of that, it's probably an advantage for you to have someone like Cahill in the county squad. But likewise, I suppose you would like to have 1 or 2 in the Clare 20s maybe, or something like that as well, just to get more football under your belts, maybe more lads to have more football played at the start of the year.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, exactly. Like, this time of year now, we wouldn't normally be used to having Cahill, I suppose, as at every training session, because we with the county setup. So it's a great advantage to be there every single night, and he's the leader on the field for the county, and he's the leader with Coolmeen, and it's great to have those players at training every night. But yeah, I'd say under 20s it would be good for the younger lads to have more game time as well. But I suppose that's just the way it is now, and you just have to move on with the structure that's there.
Yeah, and I suppose, Sean, on that note, we wish you and the rest of you, the Coolmeen management, players and Coolmeen supporters, a very prosperous 2020 championship in the year which has seen many tragedies in relation to COVID all across not only Clare but all across Ireland. May you enjoy your footballing campaign in the intermediate championship, and hopefully come October you look back with sort of fond memories and you can reflect on the 2020 intermediate football championship where you have achieved your targets and goals, and hopefully it'll be a happy one for all Coolmeen supporters, players and management. So all we can say is best luck, Sean, and the best luck to Coolmeen, and hopefully it'll be a prosperous championship for you. Take care.
Thanks very much, Jim.
Thank you. My name is Jim Conlan from RCB Radio Sport, live at 92.5 and 94.8 FM and online at www.rcb.ie. As we continue our build-up now of the senior and intermediate championship, our focus switches to intermediate grade, and especially the tie between O'Currys versus Coolmeen. I'm delighted now to be joined this evening by an O'Currys selector and a member of the backroom staff, Andy Curtin. And I suppose, Andy, if I can start off by reflecting on 2019, I suppose we saw 5 teams come down from the senior status. You were one of them. I suppose you would have had ambitions to be roughly in the shake-up last year in terms of getting back up there on your first attempt. It didn't really work out that way. And do you think maybe the proposed amalgamation between yourselves and Naomh O'Currys playing in senior sort of took its toll on your panel and your resources in terms of trying to achieve your main aim?
Well, Jim, I suppose it can't be discounted, but you know, the intermediate games were always played before the senior amalgamation, so you would hope that the players would have been focused on the intermediate and their own club first and foremost. I don't know. We were a bit flat last year, particularly after coming down from senior level. You know, we basically felt that we underperformed, even though you know there was great coaching there with Michael Carmody and Dermot Galvin. And myself was involved, but I'm not including myself in that list. But you know, we felt that we underperformed, and that you know, the year was a little bit disjointed. A lot of fellas went away. J1s and so on and so forth, and no, we're not unique in that, because I'm sure every club has the same problem. Unfortunately, our panel can be limited, and you know, when you miss these fellas, they were coming back and stuff, but it just wasn't down to the fellas that went away, because when they came back, they gave it their all as well, to be honest, you know. So it really is hard to know. We were well beaten in the quarterfinal by the eventual winners, so it's you know, it was a difficult year, let's say it that way, and we felt that we could have performed better. I'm not saying we were good enough to win the championship. Maybe we were if we got a rub at the green, but we certainly felt we should have done better than we did.
Yeah, and I suppose for O'Currys as well, I suppose in terms of the league sort of action last year in the Gary Cup, you were doing okay in the league for a while. You were in the sort of shake-up to try and get back up there. It's just probably the group would have a harder group, maybe done you a bit of more impetus going into the Brickens game.
Well, if you go back to the league, I mean, we had 2 fantastic wins against Cracklow in Cracklow and Doonbeg in Doonbeg, and we felt we were going well at that time, you know. Training was going well, you know, and then all of a sudden, as I say, summertime came around and fellas started to move away, and we had a few injuries and stuff like that as well. So it's very, very hard to know. We didn't really have much success after those games. The exception being Kilkee in the first round of the championship, and after that, then we lost to the Gales, and then, as you say, we lost to the eventual winners. So you know, we were going well, but obviously something went amiss between the time between the league and the championship started, and it wasn't. And you know, in fairness, it wasn't as if any fellas took a back seat or thought that they were coasting or anything like that. Just one of those things. I've thought a lot about it since last year myself, and I just couldn't put my finger on it, you know. So I'm sure.
I suppose, Andy, when we look at Corrys, you've great experience during the likes of Michael O'Shea, Sean Hawke, Owen Try, long-time servants of O'Currys. But in terms of new blood coming through, we see Thomas Clancy there involved with the Clare 20s, and he was probably a pivotal player for you there last year. I know you had Shane Brown probably this year it was part of the Clare minor panel. But I suppose you had an awful lot of few players going back 3 or 4 years ago that were probably competing in minor A and under 21A, and a few of them like Cahill Downs was on the Clare setups at that time. Has this probably those youngsters sort of dried up now? Is it just getting 1 or 2 every year? Or?
Well, when you look at the team that played Brecons, there are a number of changes. Owen Triumph is away abroad now with the Defence Forces. He's serving abroad until the autumn. Shane Brown wasn't there last year. He came onto the scene this year. Yeah, we have the old stagers, and great servants of the club, the likes of Hawken O'Shea, as you've mentioned. Garrod Lynch. He's moving on as well too. They've all given an awful lot to the club, and they're still involved in the club, and they're still very interested in it. They'll be, they're still there. They haven't gone away. We're lucky that we have the likes of Thomas Clancy, Shane Brown, Alex Harvey, Cahill Downs, and those, as you mentioned, like Seamus Keane. A lot of those fellas are coming on to, they're coming on the team now. They're good players. Our problem, I suppose, is that our panel is limited, but we have good footballers, and they have bought into the club, and for that reason, I'm delighted to be involved with them. They are a great bunch of lads, but numbers are tight. But as I said before, we're not unique in that in the road clubs.
Yeah.
When you're operating off a panel of 20, you're in a difficult situation, particularly if you pick up injuries and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
I suppose, Andy, if I can bring you on to this year now, and I suppose like every club, before COVID came in, some clubs were able to get a league game in, some others. How about yourselves? Did you play around the league action at the start of the year?
We had a good start to the league. We beat Kilmahel in Kilmahel.
Okay, that was a good result.
Yeah, that was a good result, and that was it then. That was COVID kicked in then at that stage, and every club in the country has had to deal with COVID. You know what I mean? But then on the other side of it, fellas started doing a bit of their own training and stuff like that. When the groups of 3 could come together, they got together, and then they were delighted to get back into the pitch again and train collectively. But I'm sure every football club in the county and in the country is wondering where they are after the COVID. It really is a short lead up to them. What you're doing is you train as well yourself, by yourself, or as opposed to with the team. You know what I mean? So I think it's going to be interesting to see how fellas come out at the end. We've had a couple of challenge games as well, just to give us an indication where we are. But as we know, challenges are in the championship.
And I suppose, Andy, your opponents, Coolmeen, I suppose, very similar to yourself. They're a small knit club, traditionalist, die-hard, sort of great attitude. They love their football back there. And under a new manager, Mikey Heher from previous manager Clondegad is over him this year. I suppose Mikey got Clondegad to a county final and a few Cusack Cups finals as well. And I suppose Coolmeen had their 1 league game at the start of the year. Now they turned over Cracklow, and Cracklow had a few seniors playing like Lee McGrath and Inda Boyce and Michael Hines, although only Colin McInerney and the Collinses weren't playing in Colin McGrath. But there was still an awful lot of the other contingent that you would be saying for Cracklow that would be were starting. So that was a good win for Coolmeen at the start of the year. And I suppose their team probably looking to try and take the next step. I suppose I saw them last year against Shannon Gales, and while the Gales were very good in the first half, Coolmeen came into it in the second half, and if they had taken their scoring opportunities, who knows, they might have got over the Gales. So people look at this tie, Coolmeen and Currys, and they say it's going to be hard fought, everything's going to be a battleground, it's going to be very hard fought around the middle, and people saying this will go right down to the wire.
Well, I'd have to agree. We played Coolmeen in the challenge last year out in Clare Castle. They beat us on the same evening, and it was a real tough battle. It was only a challenge. A lot of good footballers, of course. We've got Carl O'Connor, fine midfielder, county man, his brothers there as well, and a few other players as well, which I won't mention because we know about them. But they're a fine team. They're a strong team, and they're plenty of football. They're a small club, but they're a united club. They're well drilled, I understand, this year. And yeah, it is going to go down to the wire. It is going to be a very, very tight game. It's a game that'll be well worth watching if we weren't involved.
Yeah.
But it would be very, very hard to predict who's going to come out of that match. To be honest with you, I'm not just saying that now. Of course, because of Coolmeen beat us last year, you think would it be slightly favourites going into the game? And I'm not trying to be smart here, but I don't know. As I say, we'll see on the day, and it will be on the day. But I imagine it's a game that's going to come down right to the wire.
And I'm not saying that, Andy. That's my own personal thoughts on the game as well. I was just looking at the intermediate sort of games, and you could probably 60-40 in most of the games. Kildare versus Corfin is a 50-50 game also. I just looked at it, I said, Coolmeen and O'Currys, that's 50-50. And I saw Kildare Corfin, and that's, for me, that's 50-50 as well. So that's the way I sort of look at this tie as well. And I suppose a big area and a big key for you is where Coolmeen are going to play Cahill, because Cahill's sort of versatile. They could come with a surprise, they could start him in the middle, or else they could throw him in a full forward, and that creates another element. So you have to, I suppose, with O'Currys, you have to be wary of wherever Cahill does. Like the Gary Brennan, if he goes in on top of the square, he's going to be very much an asset with the new mark rules as well.
Absolutely. But listen, it's going to be very hard. We can preempt what way Coolmeen are going to play, and neither can they preempt what way we're going to play. So it's going to be, we're going to have to adapt on the day. We're very good coaches on the line. Of course, we've Andy McMahon is our manager, and Owen Murray and Oisin Telty are two fine coaches, and they're well able to read a game. This game could be decided by a bounce of a ball. And tactically, yes, will there be tactics? Every game has tactics now, particularly during the championship. But it is going to be so tight. I think that whoever will win it will have deserved their win. Let's put it to you like that. Obviously, I hope it's going to be Currys.
And I suppose, Andy, in terms of your back now, sort of 3 weeks now at this sort of stage, and I'm speaking to a good few clubs. I've spoken to a load of clubs, all the senior clubs. Most of them are going outside the county for challenge games. An awful lot of them are going outside the county for challenge games. Some intermediate clubs have been lucky enough to get to play one or two senior clubs in challenges. Other intermediate clubs have been finding it much harder. They've been playing probably contenders for the Junior A Championship. You don't have to tell me who you played yourself, but have you gone outside the county route, or have you been able to get one or two senior clubs for challenges?
We played one senior club from here. We played an intermediate club from Limerick. And there were two very good workouts, is how we describe it. So but it gives you an idea as to how your players are playing and the systems are in place and so on. But and it's good experience, particularly for the younger players. But it's still not championship. It's not. The championship brings it out. You can smell the championship when you're approaching the field. You know what I mean? And that's really essentially the difference. And it's going to be down to whatever teams in the championship wanted most, or because I think nearly equally everybody is equally prepared for this championship because of the run-up time was so short. And if and I assume everybody abided by COVID rules, etc. So there was individual training and all the rest, but it will all be down up to the day, Jim. I'm convinced of that.
And I suppose, Andy, in terms of your panel last year, you mentioned their own try is with Darren Forces. He's probably not available to you. In terms of last year's panel, have you gained any players who would have been overseas but because of COVID are here, or likewise have you other players in England or that can come home or can come back, or have you any players suffering long-term injuries that weren't available last year that are back on the scene?
Not really, Jim. Our panel is a panel of 20. We've Owen Try is the only person that's been away. We've lost a couple of players who didn't come back this year to play, and we gained a couple of young lads, and that's it. So Shane Brown being one of those. So our panel is more or less the same as last year.
And I suppose, Andy, in terms of the format this year, I suppose, look, it's the format. It's basically win your first round, you one more game, then get a favourable draw in the winners round, you're into county semi-final. 2 games into county semi-final. You can sit back, you can watch the 3-way playoff. You can see who the 4th team will be in that. You can go size them up, learn about them. But on the flip side, if you're one of the teams, if you're not successful the first day out, if you go into that 3-way playoff, you're going to have to, you mentioned there about a small panel, you're probably going to have to play two games in the space of 24 hours to get to a semi-final. But also, if you do come through that semi-final, you'll probably have 1, 3, maybe 4 games on the bounce. So you're coming with savage momentum. So I suppose for a club like O'Currys with a small panel, you'd be very much hoping to go through the front door and hopefully get a favourable draw in the winners round, maybe the winners of Kilfenora or Rogue, or the winners of Wolf Tones or Michael Cusick, someone you would feel similar to yourselves.
Yeah, well, you see, when you look at the way the draw came out, there was a couple of draws that you called there were 50-50. You know, so if listen, the idea should be to win your first game, and don't sit back and watch and see what happens then, because there will be losers in the other some of the draws. If you draw them in your next game, you're going to be equally in trouble. So you want to avoid.
Like Kildycer or Corofin will be.
Well, I didn't want to mention names, but absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, then you know that would be a disaster. No, I think all the teams obviously will be going out to win their first game, because it probably is the easier route. Yes, it would be lovely to say, well, we're beating the first round, but then should be 3 great games and we were flying. By the time we got to the semi-final, we were flying. You know, there's only one team that's only going to be able to say that, like.
Yeah.
You know, and with a small penalty and with injuries, you're quite right, Jim. You know, we may not be in that position. So win your first game if it's all possible.
I suppose, Andy, in terms of preparation for O'Currys, likewise with Coolmeen, you don't really have any dual players, so all the preparation is all football focused. So you have access to your panel probably 2 nights, probably three times a week at this sort of stage. There are a few dual clubs in the intermediate, so that probably is a bonus where you can hone things in preparation for that one game, that it's not a staggered sort of approach, waiting for guys to come back. So that's probably in a short sort of championship, in a short build up, having access to your full panel every night of the week, it can only help O'Currys as well.
It has to be an advantage. It definitely has to be an advantage. Now we have a few boys working away as well, and some fellas then they're working in the hospitality industry, so they could be caught up weekend. So to get your full panel together for training sessions, you know, there's a bit of juggling to be done. But you know, you are getting good maybe two training sessions a weekend with most of your panel there. And yes, it's quite right to say that the shorter lead-in period, the better for that sort of situation. And we're not clashing with any rugby club or a hurling club or anything like that. So that's a benefit, absolutely.
I suppose at the start of the year, you had Thomas Clancy in with the Clare under-21s with Michael Neal, and he was prominent. He featured a good bit, but he's probably coming off a season where he probably had a good bit of football played, probably training. So he'll probably come back to you with a high level of fitness compared to some of the other lads in terms of footballing ability. So he's probably one of those players that you'd be expecting a lot coming into championship, because he's probably more football played. He's probably fresher than the lads, and plus he has maybe 2-3 months of real hard work done at the start of the year.
Yeah, and most importantly, his attitude is fantastic. You know, he lives and breathes football, and he lives and breathes O'Curry. So he is great to have back in the panel as well. And you know, fellas look up to him, and he is a good player, and he's great to have. We're delighted to have him, and he is, you know, as I say, he will be in good shape hopefully for the match against Coolmeen.
And I suppose it's fairness when people look at Coolmeen, they say Cathal O'Connor, but as you mentioned, Coolmeen have some other good players, and you're all too aware of them, the likes of Mark. Okay. You won't mention names, but I'll mention a few of them now. Tomas Coffey, Mark Meany, for example. Mark Meany was in with the Clare seniors there for a while as well. Really good footballer as well. So it's sometimes people look and they say Coolmeen, they probably look at Cahill's influence the way they look at Gary Brennan's influence for Clondigad, but Coolmeen are very adept to winning games without Cathal O'Connor. So even they're used to that. They're played with him. Obviously, he's a major asset, but not everything is solely reliant on Cathal for Coolmeen either.
As I said, we played him last year, and anytime I've seen them, okay, Cathal is a fine player, absolutely, but he's not the only player on that team. No way, there's an awful lot of good players on that Coolmeen team across the board in both defence and attack. You know, I'd be very, very impressed with them, and I'm not trying to blow them up because we're meeting them around for that, but they are a very, very good team. You know, they're as strong a team as in the competition, if you ask me. You know, so we're certainly not taking Coolmeen for granted anyway. I'm not sure Coolmeen are not taking us for granted. We're very well aware of what the challenge is going to be on the weekend after next.
I suppose, Andy, if you're looking at the intermediate championship as a whole, like the senior, in terms of progression, I suppose you're obviously one of the contenders. You want to win it, I suppose. But for other teams as well, they can have a real cut of it. Because there's no relegation, there's no fear, there's no trapdoor. So teams that you're probably not expecting, probably who might have their onus at the start of the year to preserve, they become an awful lot more dangerous now in one games because they can sort of express themselves. So you mentioned about a winners round or whoever gets through, and all eyes are just focused on this round. But dare I say it, intermediate championship this year, any first team is a dangerous team or a danger.
Well, this is it. Like, I mean, that's why you should try and get through as handy as possible. You know what I mean? Because you look at the grouping there in the draw. For the most part, there's no easy draw in it. You know what I mean? Every team that has been drawn in this competition for the first round is capable of beating the other. You know what I mean? And that makes for a very good competition. What would be perceived as a weaker team in that group? I wouldn't be prepared to say it because in the way we performed last year, I'm saying, well, on our day we're a great team, and if we perform like some of the games last year, well, then maybe we may not be as good as we'd like to think we are.
And I suppose how important is it for, I mentioned you O'Currys, you're a small panel, you're a tight group base of players, but in terms of progression for some of your youngsters to try and get back to the senior status, I suppose also in terms of your rural isolated population, for the other guys, for some of your senior lads to go for another year, to go for another 2 years, to try and keep your young lads around, to try and keep them interested. I suppose Currys have a tradition in the last few years, they have been up into that senior grade. That makes it all that more easier for a guy to say, right, I'm going to stay on for another year or two, or youngsters to stay a role. I'm going to be playing Milltown, or I'm going to be playing Kilmore or Bricken or Crackler or something. So there's all the young lads want to play the best teams as well. So for you, I imagine to try with your numbers as well, to try and get up there as quickly as possible is probably to try and preserve your club as well, I presume, in terms of keeping your player pool.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. But obviously, we'd like every team would want to be playing senior football. You know what I mean? But it's not realistic in a lot of situations. And we have a lot of good footballers in the club. Even though the panel might be limited, but there are younger players there that deserve to have a shot at playing senior football as well. And with the county experience like young Clancy and all the rest, and some of the older players as well have had that experience down the years of playing even with the juniors and county and all the rest. So you would aspire to play senior football again.
I suppose you mentioned that sort of younger sort of generation, and we've seen the likes of Owen Brew, Jim Marlin, for example, coming of age, coming as sort of leaders. And I suppose he had a really terrific talent, but Jack Scanlon, which he lost him, he sort of went overseas as well. So I suppose in terms of Sean and Michael have given great service to O'Currys, but you're probably looking for those 24-year-olds, those 25-year-olds now to really become the leaders of that team, and obviously to take over the leadership mantle from Sean and from Michael in terms of what they give you.
Well, they're at that age now, Jim, and this is their time to show their leadership on the field, and they're capable of doing as well, and we're hoping that that's what's going to happen in 2 weeks' time, But time will tell. But yes, but they are good leaders. They're good leaders in training. They're good leaders in challenge games. They always show, and they wear the jersey with pride. And that's a big thing.
Yeah, and I suppose, Andy, on that note, I suppose we'll leave it there. And I suppose we all here at RCB Radio West Clare Radio, we wish O'Currys a very prominent and productive intermediate campaign in 2020. Hopefully you'll achieve the targets and ambitions and aims that you set out to achieve at the start of the year. And hopefully come the first week of October that you'll probably look back on the intermediate championship with great satisfaction and great reward, and it'll be one that O'Currys will, for fans, supporters, players, management, will have fond memories on what has been a tough year and a sad year for everyone involved with the circumstances. I suppose first of all we have to be thankful that we're back on the playing fields, because for majority year that didn't look possible. So for me, Jim Conlan here, RCB Sport. Andy, best of luck, and hopefully it's a good 2020 campaign for O'Currys.
Good to talk to you, Jim. Thanks very much.
Thank you.